Let's have some questions from the floor to the panel, please. We've got a mic here, which I'll send over to you when you raise your hand. Any questions? Yep, gentleman right there to start with, and then we'll come in. Go ahead.
Me? Oh, thank you. I thought somebody behind me. Why is it that all the party conferences that have just gone, the Chancellor's autumn statement, the last G8, the last G20, the last OECD, tax avoidance was a dominant issue. Sorry, I'm Paul Monaghan speaking from Fair Tax Market. It was a dominant issue right across the globe. Why is it that for the vast majority of corporate responsibility teams in this room, they're either locked out the tax debate in most big businesses, or they're scared to go in the room and engage with it?
Who wants to take that?
Well, we've already done this, so I'll probably better no comment. But the one thing I'd say is that the responsibility in that has to come up to the CFO. So when we made that decision, everything came up to myself, and we looked at it, we evaluated, and we said that's something we want to go for. I don't think you can say, the Director of Sustainability, Head of Sustainability should have that responsibility. I think ultimately it's the CFO's responsibility. You'd agree with that, Deirdre?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my experience is that they're locked out of the debate. So we have conversations, repeatedly on, or routinely about what level of disclosures we should have. We've had discussions where the people from our corporate relations teams are involved in discussing country-by-country reporting. What is the best way? Should we put our tax policy, on our website? So I wouldn't say they're locked out of the debate, but I do agree that the decision ultimately is not a group decision. It's not a collective decision. Right. It's a singular decision.
How much, just on the back of that, and again, a layperson's question here, how much friction does there generally tend to be between the CFO and the sustainability people in the company?
Well, in my position, very little.
Very little?
Sustainability.
And getting less, I would imagine.
Sustainability is one of our 6 core values that all our staff have in the back of the business cards, our 20,000 staff. So it's core. We don't have any kind of real conflicts. And would the sustainability people here agree with that?
Silence is definitely.
Yeah. Let's have another question there. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Phil Drew, Blaze Projects, part of Brunswick Group. Question about communication, which has cropped up quite a number of times, as has the sense in which sustainability is an increasing part of, a bigger part of the conversation. To what extent is sustainability and some of the agendas and issues that you've talked about part of the big moments in your calendar, so results time? To what extent are you communicating about sustainability then, and to what extent are you receiving questions from investors at those key calendar moments?
I mean, I can talk. We don't get, again, in my business, and it may be about the nature of our business and not being as heavily capital intensive, we don't get a significant amount of questions from investors, in particular across elements of natural resources. Because of the nature of my business, I'd be more likely to get one on alcohol and society, for example, and that does come up. I mean, we have now integrated a great deal of that reporting into our annual report, actually to try to make a much more cohesive conversation between what we're saying about overall performance and long-term sustainability. Last year, our year end is June 30th, is the first time we've done it. So we'll see how much of a response that we get, but it doesn't. We have comments in in both of our major financial releases about various elements, either about alcohol and society or about broader environmental measures, but it differs from time to time. So I don't know that it would be fair to say it features. It's present, but we don't get a lot of questions on it.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar in terms of my experience either. I mean, our business is not a publicly quoted business so we're not doing quarterly results announcements to our shareholders, although we do support our parents' quarterly announcements, but we're not quite in the direct public eye in the manner of some other UK PLC FTSE companies. We do an annual report that's similar to what's just been said, which has quite a chunk on, so we proactively put that in there, even though we don't necessarily have to as a private company. We've created an annual report that tries to put as much of that out there with a pretty good section on CSR and sustainability in there, which we're building year to year to try to do a better job. Where it does come up, it comes up more around, again, sorry to bang on about it, but it does come on in respect of our CO2 emissions for our cars and our products, and around the technological, are we making investments in plug-in hybrids, and our aluminium investments, and explaining some of those, explaining some of the investments that we're making in new engines and those sorts of technologies. So it comes up in those, I guess, largely around the investments we're making, and just explaining why we're making them. It comes up in that context mostly.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think for us, it's like everything that we present. Shareholders actually are probably less interested if you're performing. If you're not performing, they'll look and dissect it. It's actually stakeholders. It's for us, it's consumers, it's customers, it's government bodies, etc. It's very important that that information is there. But how many questions do we get on them? Very little.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's because we're doing the right thing, but we've got to do more of the right thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Peter Knight from Context. I realise that it's the sort of cuddly variety of the FT that turns up here on a New Year's Monday night. And there's been a lot of talk about doing the right thing, which sounds to me like really wishy-washy, hippy-dippy type talk. How representative is that of your colleagues in the FTSE 100?
Which is actually what I was trying to get at when I asked whether the cynicism is increasing or decreasing among your peers. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think it's decreasing. I think you have to look at the universe and of FTSE 100 and where some of the businesses are in commodities and banks, etc., and they're dealing with their own issues at the moment. But I certainly think over time, if you spoke to someone at BP, sustainability is a huge issue there. Clearly, that they're starting to push forward, and CFOs certainly there will strongly believe in it. How public you need to be, waving the flag is the question you're asking. And I think a lot of FTSE 100 companies are actually walking the talk, but they're maybe not publicising it as much as they should be doing.
Anyone else?
Well, the world actually...
Was that fair, that comment?
I think organisations are in different stages of, I suppose, taking it seriously. I've been in the insurance industry quite a long time. Joined Bupa just over 2 years ago. I think sustainability in my previous experience was regarded as something that was done in a back room by the corporate affairs team. It didn't feel front and centre. It certainly, feels more so in Bupa, but I don't for a minute think of it as hippy-dippy because, the way it's actually about getting good financial returns on projects where you put your money, but recognising that you have a choice, and sometimes you can get that good financial return without being terribly bothered about the sustainability aspects of it. Actually, where you can get a good return and really take on the sustainability aspects of it, well, that is just kind of a no-brainer as to why wouldn't you do that and do more of it.
I think it's a fair comment that the companies or CFOs who are likely to come and be on a panel are the ones who are most interested in the topic. And if you kind of look across or participate in things generally, I think it's very variable. I would, compare it to diversity. You'll find the same thing. You'll have panels of people come and talk about diversity. There are other people who aren't doing anything. So, but I would say it's growing in importance. So in the conversations I've come in general networking events, in CFO networks, it is a topic of conversation much more than it was, 3 years ago. So it is certainly growing in awareness, and I think in people getting serious about evaluating how it should be taken forward in their businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm well placed to judge, because I think your comment's right. It's maybe a self-selecting panel, so it's probably a fair comment. Well, I'm not going to sit here and defend the banking world, but from talking to some very senior bankers at some well-known UK banks, the concept of being part of the community that they're in and being a sustainable part of that community, that's part of the language and the discourse that I've had with some of those very senior bankers as they think about how to move their business forward and be more acceptable in the eyes of the public and the communities that they serve. Whether they're necessarily achieving that or there's lots of challenges there, and I'm not qualified to talk about them. But
These are some of the big UK banks you're talking about.
Yes, and those are some of the discussions that are being had in those institutions. So I don't know that it's just sort of the people sat up here. But again, I don't know what's happening in every other business around the world either. So it's hard to comment comprehensively.
Okay. One more question here, and then I'm going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, okay. Make two quick ones.
Just a very quick question. The role, I don't know if it's given at BAT, so just the role of government, and is there a danger that the electorate doesn't follow suit? Again, there's been quite a backlash from consumers around climate change levies and tariffs on their energy bills. Is there a danger that the electorate doesn't follow on this agenda?
I think if you go to, I remember talking to shareholders 6-7 years ago about energy efficiency, and there's some cracky energy efficiency. That means consumers are going to use less. That's bad for your business model. And we said, no, we've got to embrace it. It's important that consumers can see that efficiency coming through. I think there is a clear, in our industry, there's kind of three kind of key kind of areas that you've got to look at: decarbonisation, security of supply, and affordability. And clearly, affordability is a big issue at the moment. Less of an issue than it has been politically. We're seeing more kind of focus on buses and rail fares, etc. And I think going forward, that is going to be an issue that government are going to have to look at and say, how do you deal with the energy efficiency or the additional renewables that we're going to bring in? Do you put that into direct taxation, which we've been pushing for, rather than having a kind of regressive kind of tax that's put on the poorer consumers in energy? So I do think it is something that after we get through the general election, depending on which government's in power, we will have to see how that goes forward. And I think it's a valid question.
Okay.
But I think from our point of view, we still really need to do energy efficiency. It's a question of who pays for it.
Very quickly.
So my name's John Alexander. I run the New Citizenship Project, which I guess you'd call a sustainable innovation organisation. And I think what I take from what you've said so far has been that the kind of the case for incremental change and investing in projects that reduce per unit emissions and so on is stacking up better. What's the role of the CFO though? So arguably we need some slightly more transformative changes. We need some bigger changes than those kinds of things get to. What's the role of the CFOs of big organisations and that kind of thing? So for example, in transportation, creating capacity to think of Jaguar Land Rover not just as a car maker but as a transportation organisation. In the energy sector of decentralised energy generation and that kind of thing. How can you? Are you thinking about that, and how can you do more of that? Because I would argue that the changes we need are rather more than the sort of thing you've been talking about.
Let's have a very quick comment from you, Ken.
Clear there's more to be done. I think you're right. There's more transformative changes in front of us. I'm sure that the future of mobility will be different from how we see it today, and some of those trends around, we see some of it already around car sharing, for example, and those sorts of aspects are already with us, and I'm sure will continue to develop, and those are things that we're working on today for the future. Do we have more work to do in that space, and does the CFO have more role to play? Probably yes, in terms of continuing to be as far-sighted and as cuddly as one of the other questioners suggested that we are, in terms of helping to balance and see the ways in which those things can be part of the future for our businesses versus perhaps not.
Okay, Deirdre, Ken, Evelyn and Gregor, thank you very much indeed for your candour. Thank you very much indeed for your questions as well, and apologies we couldn't get to a few more. Thank you.